Marshelle.
Hi, Bridget. This episode,
We're going to talk about
what are the things that are going on in our lives?
it's kind of like maybe this might be like,
Yeah, sorta, kinda.
life lesson.
hi.
Sup.
Yeah, sup.
How's
it going?
I'm Bridget.
I'm Marshelle.
This is Yeah, Sorta, Kinda. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Happy Wednesday, or whatever day you're listening.
Yeah.
Should be Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday is when this show goes live, if you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not Wednesday right now for us in reality, so
No.
all of it, I guess this is all just a web of lies. This is why it's Yeah, Sorta, Kinda. It's Yeah, Sorta, Kinda Wednesday. Can we get it?
There you go.
Does that
There you
make
go.
sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. Some odd way.
So, the topic... Hi, Balsam.
Yeah.
The topic today is kind of fun. It's kind of fun how we got to it. So,
yeah.
It's on haunting connections. But the way that we came upon this was... Okay, so we were planning out our October, and we were discussing some of the various topics that we'd like to cover, and one of them that we were playing around with has to do with some ghost stories, etc. And Marshelle was writing in her notebook, talking about haunting
in Connecticut.
Okay.
So, ooh,
Yeah.
should tell that story.
And so she was talking about that, and then she looks down at her notes. She's like, "Oh, that's funny. Remember when I was talking about haunting in Connecticut?" She's like, "I wrote down the words haunting connections." And then she started to like cross it out, and I was like, "Wait. That's a podcast. That's a podcast."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. You're
It
right."
was very exciting.
Very
actually.
exciting, because
I'm excited about this one.
this is something that we've talked so extensively about amongst ourselves. It's been one of the main things we always talked about when we first became friends.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'd ever called them haunting connections, but like we both knew what each other meant when those words showed up. It was like,
Yeah.
I've had a number of haunting connections. Like I've been intertwined with people romantically. And I would say like these, okay, so these are like strong, visceral, almost otherworldly communications you have with people. But they're certainly not limited to romance, because
No.
whether you call it a psychic connection or ESP or telepathy, you don't have to look very hard to find examples of such experiences with like a mother and a child, or siblings, or twins, or best friends, or even with pets.
Yeah. Look at that possibilities.
So we have examples from our own life. We have examples from, if we get into them, we have a couple stories from where, that we've heard. Yeah. Did anything jump out to you immediately? Like you were like, "Ooh, I have one," or?
I do. I was just thinking, okay. Well, the both. There's romantic, but there's a friendship in particular. Okay. It makes me vulnerable to talk about this because it's one of the deepest, oldest.
Do I know it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the deepest, oldest connections I have. But it's also deeply personal because it's different. When I was little, I was talking about feeling like I was this very magical child. There was I saw this playmate. I would talk to this person. I could hear. It was like they were there. I was convinced that someone was there, my age, a little boy. It was amazing. And then my parents called it my imaginary friend. I mean, I was talking to this kid constantly. This kid that I saw him. You couldn't tell me otherwise. Climbing trees, walking through fields, like plotting against Santa Claus when you're getting your picture taken, like for Christmas, at the mall or whatever.
Like it sounds like a companion with you for a lot of things.
It was constant. It was like a constant companion throughout my childhood. 100%. And then, even as I got older, I still felt like there was someone there.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you say throughout childhood, was there like a point where you felt like it faded or?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to think. I think it's always been there. Or it was always there throughout my life. Maybe I was just more aware of it when I was younger. But then as I got older, I remember before I actually moved to California, a friend of mine was like, you need to be in California. Why aren't you out there? And I said to him instinctively, without even, hesitating, I was like, yeah, I know. My friend's always telling me that. And I stopped later and I was like, who the hell am I talking about? Who's talking? Because nobody had really consciously that I could think of. So I feel like it was a presence. Mm-hmm. As I said, my parents called it an imaginary friend. My dad was a little concerned about it because I was always talking to this kid. And it freaked him out a little bit. And my mom's like, oh, I think it's okay.
Wait. Mm-hmm. So did this kid stay the same age or did they age with you?
Aged with me. Totally aged with me.
That's very different than an imaginary friend.
Yeah. So I lumped it into that category because I assumed, that must be what it is.
Right, and that's what you're being told.
Exactly. And when I was little, though, I've said that, I think I really saw the world. I sensed things I saw. But when I was out in the trees, when I would hang out, because I had that very Huck Finn childhood, I felt like there were a couple of people I would see, kids that I would see sometimes. But there was this one in particular that was just always there. Always, always, always. And that's the one that I grew up with, basically. Come to find out, fast forward to 30 years later.
What is time?
What is time? Hanging out with a friend of mine that when I first met him, we were like in our early 20s, and he was like, I know you. Like, does that work for you? Is that how you hit on people? Like, is that what you? And he's like, no. And he was like really engaged with somebody. I mean, it wasn't anything like that. He's like, I'm telling you, I know you. And he's like, and we sat all night trying to figure this out. And then never really did, but we were like, okay, I feel like I grew up with you, like we just had this amazing friendship. It was just always a friendship. Mm-hmm. It's like we just trusted each other through thick and thin. Finally, maybe 35 years later, I don't know when it was, we were in a bar and we were actually talking. Somehow we got into this.
35 years in total, not 35 years in addition to the 20 years.
Oh yeah, no, total. Like say we're in, whatever. Okay. So we're okay. So, yeah, I'm not 73. So it was.
Just make sure.
I like to say I am because I feel younger, but I'm not. He and I were talking in a bar, and somehow we got on this topic we just started having this conversation about all of these things we'd never really said, talking about life experiences that neither of us knew about. And then he kept looking at me, and then finally one day, he was like, and one day, later on that night, he was like, did you have an imaginary friend when you were little that you talked to all the time? And I had to stop, and I was like, well, yeah. I just didn't really know what to say. But he went like this. He did it in air quotes. Did you have an imaginary friend? Mm-hmm. I said, well, yeah. And he goes, I did too. And he's like, did you have pigtails when you were little? I'm like, always. Like I always had little pigtails. And he was like, what did the kid look like that you saw? And so I described this little toe-headed kid. And he was like, and he goes like, that was me. He was like, he goes, I don't know how you explain this. He's like, but I think, because do you remember when we first met? And I was like, I know you, or like whatever. And I was like, does that work for you? And he was like, that's what I think we've been experiencing our whole lives. He's like, I've just always instinctively trusted you. It was the most, then we're both like, but I know he believed it. Me, I was a little skeptical, but yet I believed it. But then at the same time,
well, you had experience that was matching that,
mm-hmm.
but that's still hard to adopt the paradigm that would include that, because that's not the way at this point in your life reality was presented anymore. You know what I mean? I think like as you were a kid, you'd had room for you had room for magic. There was space for that.
Yeah.
But I think as we get older and the world becomes increasingly pragmatic, and then at some point you became a science major, like we reason ourselves out of these things because it's like,
with the science major thing, I was like,
this?
that's exactly it, man. He would say, like, the experiences that I was sharing with him, that's what freaked him out. That's where he really started to be like, there was, when I was younger, I worked in this convenience store and I almost got abducted. And that's the one that really clicked in him, where he just looked at me like all the other stuff. And then there was all these other little stories and vice versa. And we actually had pictures of ourselves we showed later when we were kids. And I'm like, that's the kid. That's the kid. You know, and what is that? Like, scientifically, Einstein would say that our frequencies were the same. So we could hear each other. Do you know that?
I mean, science has tried to understand ESP and telepathy, and they'll say things like, okay, well, there's cells of the child in the mother's brain, and there's DNA exchanged when breastfeeding happens. Like, they can try to trace things back physically, but at the end of the day, there's just aspects here we don't have answers for. We don't fully understand them. And shame on us if we rule out the possibility, because the fact of the matter is so many people are having these experiences. So many people, all different kinds. I feel like yours is more of a unique example in that you're talking about, like, anything that I've had where I'm like, that I know of, at least for now, that I'm like, oh, that's a telepathic connection, is usually like I've established some sort of communication with this person. Like, there's something existing that I know of. As far as I know. But, like, I haven't had anything that I can think of from childhood except knowing that I had a friend out there and being drawn to Los Angeles. So I could say that's you, and I do say that's you, but I can't say that you and I have been telepathically, consciously connected since, you know, beginning of time. Not that I know of.
You know, maybe it's that expression, like, where people feel familiar to you, but maybe that's different. I think it's different too. That's that soul circle that they say. Yeah. Or maybe we are all connected in some way, but, you know, it's definitely very magical and it's very real. And I mean, I know it. I knew things about him. He knew things about me in a good way, of like, just like we were there, especially, you know.
I have an example of something, and this was one of the clearest connections I've had, and is a specific moment. So I was in a long-distance relationship, and this person I was seeing, or dating, the opposite of seeing, because long distance, this person I was dating, I remember feeling all of a sudden, I'm like at home sitting on my couch, and all of a sudden I'm feeling they're really angry, and there's something happening, like there's an event happening that's upsetting them, and that this is like taking up all their focus, but that they're in a state that I'm not, as long as I've known them, I don't, or I've been dating them, I don't know that I've felt them in this state. And this was pretty new for me. I hadn't had something quite in this vein, like maybe if somebody angry. I think I've had experiences with other people where it's like you could feel their happiness or their joy, or anyway. So I asked him if during a particular time, if he experienced anything. And sure enough, he did. And he was like, yeah, I was confronting someone, actually. It was after work. Everyone was drinking. This man was not taking no for an answer from this younger woman. And I got really mad, and it led to an argument, and I even threatened his job. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I felt that. And I actually have more examples from this person, but I almost, because of the way I look at these kinds of connections, I almost feel like the kicker is that you can actually kind of reignite thinking about them, or like, and this is where I think the haunting word comes, because sometimes you feel haunted by these connections, like you know they're not good for you, and you want to get away from them, and you're trying not to think about this person, and you want to like cut it off, and sometimes you literally have to cut it off. But yeah, I don't want to share anymore because I don't want to reestablish anything that I'm going to then have to deal with, because I don't want to hear from this person anymore. Like, it's nothing good can come of it at this point. Like, everything there ended and all that jazz. So
that makes me think about, and we've all had those moments where you're with someone and you really believe, and I'm going to say that they really mean what they're saying in those moments when you're together. They really do mean it. You can feel it. My bullshit radar is pretty good. And, but then later, like let's say time passes, or maybe even just a few days later, you don't hear from them. You think, wow, this is really going to be something, this is going to be different. This is, you're excited. You feel like you've maybe met someone.
Hope there.
Yeah, there's a sense of hope. Wow, maybe I've actually met, someone who, I've been kind of waiting for or whatever. And then they don't follow through. And that is so, then you think, wow, did I make that up? Am I imagining that? Is it, are they, now sometimes they are just assholes and they're manipulating you, but you can tell when it's a true energy.
There's something you've said to me so many times, Marshelle. You've said that people can rise to the level of vibration that you're holding, and I would say that they maybe even aspire to be, or is like true potential for them. And but they have a choice whether or not they step into that fully. And so it's, what is it you say about, like, it's why it's so important that you let people show you who they are. Because
that is exactly what I say.
Exactly, because they may or may not step into that potential, and you cannot build a long-lasting relationship on potential. You need two people who are growing and willing to be the best versions of themselves. At least if that's what you're aspiring to do, don't you want that in a partner, So you have to wait and give them the time to show you if they are stepping into that potential, or if that's just them putting their best foot forward.
That's what I was leading to, was the whole, they will rise to where you're at, and it will be the most magical moment, but then they can't, it's their choice.
Right.
It's their choice. For me personally, there was also that connection with Tommy. Like, I always knew he was out there. Now, is it perfect? No, I want to wring his neck sometimes. I'm sure he wants to wring mine. But I love him. And there is a connection there. It's deeper than that. It's like we feel tethered, like in a way. And, but we both we work on communication, and we work on being the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes, people are going to slip a little bit here and there. But if you can stay in that vibration, you can help bring the other up.
Yeah, if they're willing to join you there, and they choose that. Because this is a weird way to phrase it, but literally what I'm sensing, it's almost like I'm sensing a female out there who's listening, and she's like, holding on to a relationship that's so over. And she's just hoping and hoping and hoping that he's going to change, because he keeps saying he will, and he keeps promising, all of these things. But the evidence shows her again and again and again that he can't, and he won't, and he hasn't. And to that woman, I say, or man, if the shoe's on the other foot, or woman, all possible angles of relationship and gender identity.
Exactly.
Covering all those bases, being inclusive to everyone. However that falls, it's time to make a change for yourself. Set a boundary, decide what you want and what you're worth, and then walk away. I feel like there's a specific person that needs to be told, you need to walk away. It's time. It's done. He's not the one for you, or she. Because
you can't have a relationship, like you said, with potential, and it is choice. And that doesn't mean it's the end of love. You be grateful for that person they showed you what you want. And just because you have this connection with someone, it doesn't mean it's supposed to be lifelong. It doesn't mean it's supposed to be, they show you a beautiful side. Maybe they bring out this side to you, this womanly side or this manly side or whatever it is. They bring out
or they
growth
bring out
in
your
you, that
strength because you had to stand up for yourself.
They bring up a growth in you that you never could have experienced without them. But then it gets to be to where it's either draining or it's just undermining or it's just done.
I think that unconditional love is never been meant to destroy you. It's never meant for you to lay down and be walked over. Unconditional love doesn't mean putting them so before you that you no longer have a sense of self. That's not what that means. And it's really hard to leave a haunting relationship or a haunting connection. It's so hard because it feels almost like a drug. Like it sticks
like an addiction
with you. Yeah.
It's almost like an addiction. And that's interesting that you said that, because I just read today and I can't remember where it was, but it was something about how love can be an addiction, or the wrong person can almost be an addiction, because you're reenacting, childhood traumas or dramas that you saw. So that's a whole other thing. But that haunting connection, that telepathy, that whatever that is, it can, and it can be a friendship. Like Bridget and I can pick up on each other. Like, did you have, we'll end up realizing we had the parallel days energetically. It's really kind of funny. Like we both had we're like, well, what is that? Or
we do a lot of finishing sentences at this point. Like you'll start to say something and you're like, looking for your word. And I suddenly get a complete picture of it. I'm like, oh, I get it. And you don't even have to have me prove it. You know that I know what you know. And we haven't always been that symbiotic. Like that's I think the more we do the podcast is probably part of it, because we're in such constant contact. But it's also just the nature of who we are. The things that we prioritize in life and the growth that we're trying to do. But there's also, there's people whose pets know that they're on their way home. There's
exactly
mother and children relationship moments. Like a mom knows something's going on with her kid and calls them, and sure enough, or spouses.
You were talking about you were talking about pets. There's millions of stories about this where the dog knew that the owner was killed somehow, or they were at war, and they just knew that they would go lay at their bedside or whatever. That's amazing, because
animals are so cool and special.
They're so full of love. They're such a gift to us. So to me, this is all just evidence that there's so much more to life, as we always say, than what you see. There's a spiritual and a physical aspect to life, and they should be combined. That's what it's meant to be. And embrace these, but learn from these things, but don't hang on to a connection just because you have it, because it's not the last one you will have. That's what I want to say about that. I've had connections with people or whatever, but never with Tommy was what, I was looking for in that sense. What I felt was out there,
No matter how strong and amazing a connection feels, if that person isn't good to you, then it doesn't matter that the connection's so strong. Maybe they need time away from you to work on themselves and to step up and to maybe they'll change or grow or whatever, but you cannot hold out for that. I really don't think you can.
I think that's unhealthy. I think, I'm sure we've all done it when we were young. Maybe someday. I think,
yeah, of course.
We're very, very guilty of that. I when I was young, I know I was like, oh, maybe.
It's definitely like that. Love conquers all kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of goes along with the unconditional love. You can't sacrifice yourself for someone else.
I think that's the fallacy of that.
To the point of, I do have another example, which is different, a different kind of connection.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, this is somebody else's story, actually, that I found online. Her name's Dina Temple Raston. So she says, my father was driving along a highway near Los Angeles, and the road, as he describes it, was ramrod straight for miles before it took a sharp and unexpected left turn. My father recounts that just as he applied the brakes and downshifted into the bend, the car suddenly filled with the unmistakable scent of his mother's perfume. By the time he completed the turn, the smell was gone. When he mentioned the episode to my aunt months later, the color drained from her face. She asked my father to describe precisely where he had been, and then declared that it was the exact spot where my grandmother had died in a car accident years before.
Oh, wow.
But the beauty of that is that connections are not limited to the living. And I wholeheartedly believe that.
That reminded me, my godmother, my aunt, died of cancer years ago, and it was very bad. And I was going to New York, like maybe about 6 years ago or something like that. I'd never really been. No, I hadn't been to New York, actually. It was my first time. Hadn't thought about her at all. She used to live in New York. But I didn't tie this together. I didn't think about this. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was going there for my birthday and with some friends. Got off the metro. We were around Central Park and was walking onto a sidewalk and just about to step onto the street, on this beautiful tree-lined street. And all of a sudden, it was like this wind went through me. And I instantly felt my godmother. And I could smell her perfume, and I could feel her. She was the furthest thing from my mind, and I was so overwhelmed by that. I just got tears in my eyes instantly, and it was like I could hear her little breathy voice, you know, saying darling or something, or like kind of hugging me. She was like this amazing woman. And I had to stop. I didn't tell anyone what I was experiencing because it was so deeply personal, and I was still absorbing what had happened.
Hard to probably come up with words for that.
Yeah, I had to stop. I was so overwhelmed and so happy and sad all at the same time. You know, that was the most bittersweet, beautiful, breathtaking moment, and so unexpected. And it was such a gift in a way. And I felt so much love from her in that moment.
It makes me think like maybe she had walked that path many times or something.
I think that was the impression that I had. Is like she must have loved this little neighborhood.
Street.
Yeah, and there was like this little cafe we were going to get some ice cream, I think, or something, some gelato. And I was like, I knew it. She's like, she loved this area. She must have walked around here before. It was stunning.
That's very cool. That is interesting, the thing about scent both of those experiences have in common. There's certainly a scent that I associate with my own grandmother that I have smelled a couple different times in very illogical ways. I thought of another thing that I think ties into this but is a little bit more like telepathy vibes. Making a comment as if in direct response to something that somebody was thinking privately that they have not stated. I've done this a number of times. I remember a coworker, actually, that we would do that a lot. But I'm thinking of a time that you were actually there for. You, me, and a friend of ours were all watching a movie. And I'm trying to think how I would describe my perception of it, other than I felt the question in the air almost, and I just kind of turned to her and I answered it, and she said, "Did I say that out loud?" I didn't say that out loud.
I remember this.
I was like, "You didn't say that out loud," but I can't say I heard it. I didn't hear it. It was just the question was like posed, and I could feel it, and I could, in a sense, I knew it, but it wasn't like somebody had said blah 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 blah. Like, I think for some people that is how stuff comes to them, as they hear the phrase, like as if somebody was speaking in their ear. And I've had a little bit of that experience. This is just like a download. Like, all of a sudden the information is there in my brain is like a completed thought.
I remember this moment, and it was such a random, it wasn't a logical, it was like one of those out of the blue kind of things that she was going to say.
I was like, yeah, he does have blah, blah, blah. Something like that.
I can't remember even what the topic was, but I just remember we were all three of us started cracking up. We just thought it was such a magical moment. We loved it. It's like, really, I love this.
It's just cool, like, too, to have those types of experiences, but then have it witnessed and have it shared.
That was me. Yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. That was awesome. Well, I don't know, what else? Do we have anything else?
I feel like that's the gist of the things that I wanted to talk about. I mean, I could see other things like love versus obsession, unrequited love, the dark side of love, but I feel like we've kind of tapped into that with whoever it's like I got this specific woman. I could feel her. I could feel her asking, like, is this message for me? Like, it's so bizarre. Like, I don't know that I've ever ever had that ever in a podcast where I felt like there was a specific person that needed to hear this. But yeah, I think we covered it. I think we covered it all.
I think we did too.
Cool. All
well,
right.
guys, thank you for coming back. Come back again next Wednesday. Like, subscribe. What else is there to say about that? Go check out our new About Us section on sorta.kinda.com.
We love when you rate and give us reviews on Apple Podcasts so much. It's so helpful.
It is helpful.
And we absolutely adore everyone that's taken the time to follow us on Instagram. There's a growing community there, and it's really fun. And it's fun to watch the numbers climb, but it's even more fun to get the interaction, to get the comments, to get the questions, to have people engage with us. That's so rewarding. And for whatever reason, Instagram is the place where most of that happens. So
yeah. I mean, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, but Instagram, that's the one. You know, algorithms and be damned. Let's just keep going with it. And see you guys soon.
All right.
Love you guys.
Love you. Guess
love
we'll
you.
seal it with a kiss. Love
you.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye, you guys.